Hi, sixth graders again. This is video part 2 of our poetry unit. And I wanted to first start out with the different kinds of poems that we're going to look at. And we already covered the color poem. Uh-oh, that didn't work the way I wanted it to. Hold on. Let's go back here. Well, we already covered color poems, 5-sentence poem, and the limerick. And so those are all been taken care of. We have a few others that we're going to go over and kind of look at together so that you know what the format is for each one of these kind of poems. And then we'll go over again at the very end what the specific assignment that you are responsible for is. So let's look at an acrostic poem. Now, an acrostic poem is a poem that basically is used to, you take a word or a subject, and then for every letter in that word, you start out your line of your poem with a word with that first letter in it. So obviously each word or letter has to have at least 6 letters because you have to have at least 6 lines. And if you have an 8-letter word, you're going to have 8 lines in your poem. Each line must have at least 6 words in it. Okay, so let's do an example. Hopefully you're writing all that down, but here's an example. An Easter acrostic poem. And I bolded or I made red the first letter of each line, just to show you how it works. The title of the poem is Easter, and here are the lines. Everlasting life given by him to us. Alleluias ring out loudly from the people. Savior victorious comebacks from dead. The Father's plan fulfilled in great joy. Eternal gates opened wide for all. Resurrection life for all who believe. So, E-A-S-T-E-R, Easter, an acrostic poem. Got it? Pretty easy. Okay, so that's the acrostic poem. Now we're going to look at a diamante poem. And there's a diamante that's an opposite, and there's a diamante that's a mirror poem. So we're going to look at both of those, and then you can decide whether that's the kind of poem you want to do. But basically, it's in a diamond shape. And it's a pattern that follows a diamond pattern, using different parts of speech per line, such as this. So you're going to start with a noun, then you're going to have 2 adjectives, 3 verbs. See how there's 1, 2, 3, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1 words. Now obviously you're not going to have on this poem either 6 words per line because you're doing a diamond shaped. And when you're setting it up, it should be in a diamond shape as it's typed. So you're going to want to center it on the page, each line. So you're going to have a noun, then you're going to have 2 adjectives, then you're going to have 3 verbs, which are ing words, then a noun, and there's a line here, and you don't need that line in there for your actual poem, but that tells us when we're working with an opposite poem where we start our other subject. And then we have 2 nouns, 3 verbs, 2 adjectives, and then the noun, the opposite noun. So you're going to want to write that down. And you're going to want to know what a verb is and a noun and an adjective. But I think you all know that, hopefully. Okay? So here's a sample. This is a 3rd grade class collaboration, and it's an opposite diamante. So they start feet, stinky, sweaty, running, kicking, hurting, shoes, socks. Right here they switch. You can tell that they're switching. Hopefully they don't have hairy feet, and they don't put hats on their feet. So they have hat, hair, thinking, concentrating, hurting, which I wouldn't have used hurting. I would have used let's see, I don't know, something other than that, because it's the same word. But anyway, smart, hard, head. So the opposite of feet is head. So that's how you set that up. Now, The only difference between the opposite Diamante and the mirror Diamante is that you're describing the same thing. So when we had our pattern here where we had the line and we separated them out, we wouldn't do that for the mirror because we're describing the same thing. And so I'm pretty sure I have, yep, here we go, Miss Brown. Somebody a few years ago did this poem. It's all about Miss Brown. So they did loud, humorous, some of you may not agree, but humorous, teaching, screaming, coaching, HVCS, teacher, and here's where we would divide it if we were doing a opposite, but we're not, we're doing the same, so it all goes on. Books, language arts, caring, loving, forgiving, hyper, bodacious, which means kind of loud and out there, Miss Brown. So that's how it works if you're doing a mirror Diamante. You're describing the same thing all the way through the poem, but you're still using the format. So it's very important that you have the format down in terms of how to set it up with nouns, verbs, ing, words, etc. So that's that. Got a couple more here. Picture poems. Oh, so you're going to draw the outside of an object, and then on the insides and the outsides of the lines, you're going to describe whatever the item is. And I have an example here. Actually, it was Josh Peoples did a basketball. So as you look at it, he has the game of basketball, and then he's, with the words, he has created a picture of a basketball. And I don't know, you can probably see some of those words that he uses, dribbling, free throws, all of those things that have to do with basketball, scoring, winning, all of those things. So this is how a picture poem would work. You could do that with an Easter egg, you could do that with a heart, and draw all kinds of, or make the outline of the heart all words that are talking about love or caring about somebody. So that's what a picture poem is. You can only do one picture poem. In fact, you can only do one of any of these kind of poems for the actual assignment. If you want to do some extra ones for extra credit, that would be great. And I've there's always been people who love poetry and they want to do more. So hopefully you will as well. All right, so the next two poems are pretty similar. The first one is called a what if poem. All of the lines start with the word what if, something, and it's the same something. You need to have at least 6 to 8 lines, and here are some examples. What if I could fly? I would soar over the seas. What if I could fly? I would hover over my house. What if I could fly? I would race an eagle. What if I could fly? I would oversee the beautiful landscape. So all of the lines start the same, and then they give us something else that they would do. Now, this isn't a complete poem because there's not 6 lines, but it gives you an idea about what kind of poem or what if poem would be. I actually think I have another what if poem from no, I have If I Were. I have an If I Were poem that I'm going to show you, which is exactly the same thing. It's just like the what if poem, only it's if I were. So the poem starts out if what if I were, and then you pick something. What if I were the president? Another example would be what if I were a pizza? What if I were a doctor? And then you have 6 to 8 lines that start with that and then go on to describe what happens if you were whatever it is. So here's a poem. It's called What If I Were a Shoe? And this is from a student from a number of years ago. Actually, this student is graduating from college this year, but this was their work when they were in 6th grade. What if I were a shoe? I would be all shiny and new. What if I were a shoe? I'd be a running one too. What if I were a shoe? I would be sky blue. What if I were a shoe? I'd be the finest there is. What if I were a shoe? I would never wreck. What if I were a shoe? You'd deserve me too. Desire me too. It says desire me too. So you see, she started out, it was a girl, she started out, what if I were a shoe? And that's what the whole poem goes over and over again. What if I were a shoe? What if I were a shoe? And she did a nice job. She did some rhyming in there. You don't have to. Doesn't have to rhyme. But you do want to use descriptive words, and so that there's an example of that one. All right, let's see. Okay, free form. So let's say you don't want to use any of these pattern poems, which is fine. You can just come up with your own description of whatever topic it is that you want to use, and you need to have, again, you need to have 6 to 8 lines. That all of the lines need to be about the same thing, but there's no particular format that you're using. Now, you can only have one of these, and then I don't know if I have any examples. Nope, I don't. So it's just free poem, free form poem. But again, we want to stick to our basic understanding of poetry, which is we want to do more with less. We want to use very creative, very descriptive, very picturesque words. We want to use things that help describe something with fewer words rather than lots and lots of words. And the patterns of the poems are not, you don't keep going. When you have a line, then you return and you start a new line. It's not like script. It's not like paragraph writing. Each line, each sentence has its own line in the poem. So back to our original assignment, you have to do 4 different kinds of poems. You get to choose which of the ones that we've gone over you want to do. And you are going to have your rough draft ready for me by Monday the 27th. And one of your poems, at least one of your poems, has to be about Easter, and at least one of them has to be about your mom. And we're gonna make a nice little Mother's Day gift for your mom by doing a little poem. So it's a nice way to honor her as well, to talk about how great she is. So that's it. Hopefully you don't have any questions, but if you do, feel free to email me. And we'll be in touch. I'm going to actually be talking to you in just a little while for our Zoom meeting. Really looking forward to that. All right. God bless. Bye.